Chapter 5 of the Agency and Freelancer Academy webinar series. We're going to be talking about how to price your services and improve your agency profitability. So let me know in the chat section as well. This webinar will be extremely interactive for you all. But let me know if this is your first time on one of these webinars, then say first time or say yes. And if you've been here before, then please let me know that too. It'd be really good to just gauge what the audience is like. And let us know if you are a customer of PromoRepublic or if PromoRepublic is something new to you. There won't be a massive sales pitch in this webinar or anything like that. It's completely value driven, but it would be great to hear from you. So let's get into things, the agenda. So today we're going to cover 3 main areas. So number 1 is common pricing mistakes and how you guys can fix them. Number 2 is how you can select your pricing. And 3 is some tips to improve agency profitability. And throughout this, we will do some short Q&A sessions as well. This webinar is going to be quite punchy this week, so I don't think it will take longer than 40-45 minutes. This one's going to be very focused on providing you guys with as much value as possible around pricing. So for anyone that is new here, I saw a few of you said this is your first time. So Lindsay McCaffrey said it's her first time. Welcome, Lindsay. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dylan Hay. I am also a digital marketing agency owner, like a lot of you on this webinar series. So I am a brand ambassador for PromoRepublic, but my main thing is my agency that I run. And I launched this agency back in May of 2018, so May this year. And before that, I worked at some really cool companies within the social space and within the SaaS world, like Hootsuite and Leadfeeder. I'm sure you've heard of some of those guys. I host my own podcast, so the social media growth show. So hopefully you guys can see one of the reasons I'm leading these webinars is because I really understand what you're going through as agency owners and as freelancers trying to build and grow your business. And I partnered with PromoRepublic because they approached me and said that they wanted to build out this incredible educational series for people just like us. And they thought I'd be a great person to lead that. And I'm very, very excited about the team at PromoRepublic, the product, and this whole series, a company that's investing this much in educating people like us and people like you watching this should really be admired. So that's a quick bit about me, but we're not here for me. We're here to help you guys out. So let's get straight into things. And also thank you, Becky says she's watched most webinars. Nancy, I know you're a customer as well, so thank you. Hey to Mary, I can see you saying hello in the chat box. So it's great to see some people from the first 3 or 4 webinars here too. So section 1, common pricing mistakes and how you can fix them. So I want to ask you a question before we get started. Maybe let me know in the chat section, is this something that comes up? How often have you thought about your pricing? When was the last time you revisited your pricing structure or the way that you price things for clients? And I can see a few. So Heidi says every quarter they reevaluate, which is awesome. That's actually really, really good to hear. And Nancy says today. So Nancy, I wonder whether that was because you knew this webinar was coming out, or whether that's something that you planned. Christian says every time needs to quote. Okay, cool. Seems like actually a lot of you are thinking about this, but then Drew, who says 2 years ago. So don't worry, that pricing, and then they've forgotten about it. They set that maybe years ago when they first started. So how often have you thought about your pricing this year? But if you're one of those people that answered a little bit or not at all, I have both good and bad news for you. So the bad news first, we'll start with that. The bad news is that you're probably leaving a lot of revenue on the table. But don't worry, there is still some good news. Pricing can be a huge lever of your business, and small improvements and small tweaks that we make pay ends pretty quickly. If you're one of those, there's good and bad news for both of you. So the bad news first is that you're probably leaving a lot of revenue on the table. But don't worry, there is still some good news in this. Pricing can be a huge lever for your business, and even some slight small improvements and tweaks that we can make will pay dividends for you extremely quickly. Is that okay? I just want to check. If you can let me know in the chat that you can hear things, that would be awesome, everyone. Okay, so we have some audio issues. Okay, so we'll keep going with this. Hopefully you can pick some of that up. Heidi says it's got a little bit better. You only got half of what we're saying. Let's carry on. And if the problems continue, guys, just let me know in the chat box if it becomes like unbearable to get this improved. Hopefully we won't have any issues continuing on. Okay, so let's carry on with things. So these are what I'm going to do now is go through some of the typical pricing mistakes that people make, or some of the biggest errors that people make when they're pricing things. And we'll talk about what some of those are, as well as some ways that we can fix them further on into this webinar. So this is the first issue that I see a lot of the time, and I think Drew was one person in the chat that mentioned this. He said that he set his pricing 2 years ago, and since then hasn't revisited it. And that is what a lot of people do. That's what a lot of agency owners do, a lot of freelancers do. They set their pricing and then they forget about the pricing. So I want to talk about why you shouldn't do that. So you should treat your pricing as an afterthought. It should be one of your core competencies. We spend so much time like promoting our businesses. We spend so much time on marketing strategy, on sales strategy, on like hiring our team, on how we're positioning ourselves to our clients, but we very rarely think about pricing. And this is something as a vehicle and a lever that is just as important as all of those other things that we've just talked about. And frequently we'll look like our sales strategy every month or every quarter. We'll look at our marketing plan like every week, right? But I guarantee that probably 70 or 80% of you on this webinar don't do that with your pricing. And that's something that I haven't done myself until recently either. So I just want to make a point that set and forget pricing is one of the biggest issues that people go through. And my advice on this is to just make sure that you are frequently things. So did you all pick that up before we move on to the next slide? I just want to make sure that you're able to hear that. If you can let me know in the chat box, you can hear that, okay. Okay, so I'm just going to hang on whilst a few of you reply. Okay, so you say you hear it. Sound was a little bit choppy, but jotting down some notes. Okay, cool. So let's continue. So that's the first one. Then the second one, after set and forget pricing, the second biggest mistake that people are always making is that they're not experimenting with their pricing. So I know some of you said you visited your pricing a couple of times, but when was the last time you experimented with it? When was the last time you changed it up with the way that you structured things? Maybe introducing some different packages, switching up the price point, doing some A/B testing with your clients. When was the last time you did that, if at all? So I just want to like wait for a few of you to type away. I'm still very just conscious of the sound issues as well. So that's why if I'll be stopping every so often, it's just because I want to make sure that you guys are hearing everything so I don't have to repeat things too much. But I can see that a lot of people have said they've never experimented with their pricing. And that's really interesting. So I would say that they check in on their pricing. So on the previous slide, we were talking about those people that set and forget their pricing. But companies that still regularly check in on their pricing, they may do that, but very rarely will they actually tweak or adjust pricing or try and introduce a different package or switch up the price point. And when you do these things, you should always be thinking about what your customer actually wants and what they're willing to pay before you start to make these changes. So this experimentation should be involving your customers as well. Like when I first started as an agency, like back in May this year, I didn't have a pricing strategy whatsoever. Like my pricing strategy was to just keep putting my price up until somebody said no, and then I started to rethink about things. So it's not uncommon for people to not experiment with their pricing. I can see that a few people have said that so Christian says that he charges per day or per project, which is interesting. says that she is constantly tweaking and adjusting. But so really new at this, trying to find the sweet spot. Yeah, so you're not going to find the sweet spot immediately. Hopefully I will be back now. Let me know in the chat box. That would be really useful. Okay, everyone, so look like we are back up and running. Apologies for the problems. I'm really, if that makes a difference. If we have any issues with audio, if it cuts out, if it gets chopped, let me know in the chat box. But let's carry on. So we were talking about not experimenting with your Okay, now I'm saying it's not working again in the chat box. Okay. Hello, guys. Can you hear me now? Okay. This is bizarre. Okay. Let's just try and carry on. Let's try and get through this, and hopefully things will work themselves out. Okay, so we finished this slide about not experimenting with your pricing. So and again, if I cut out, please let me know in the chat box. That'd be really useful from you all. I really appreciate that. So there will also be a replay sent out to everyone. The replay goes onto YouTube. I'm not sure if there'll be errors in the replay or not. I don't think so. I think it should be fine. So the full replay will be on YouTube as well. Make sure you check that out on the PromoRepublic YouTube channel. But ideally, please try and stick with me. I would through these slides and provide you with as much value as possible, because this webinar is going to be really beneficial for all of you. So the next biggest mistake that people make is they do one of two things. They either give too many or they give too few options. So too many options can confuse your buyers, and I put that this gives them more reasons to become picky. Like if you're at a restaurant and you have a menu and there's 50 items on that menu, you're going to be very picky about what you choose, what you don't choose. If there's only 3 or 4 items on that menu, it's much easier for you to make a decision. And pricing works the same way. But two options can only capture certain points along the demand curve. So you might be underselling things. Let's say your client doesn't just need social media management and growth, they might need social media management, but they also need to drive more traffic to their website. So you can upsell them on paid acquisition. But if you didn't have those options within your pricing, then you would be underselling yourself as well. So I want you to think about looking at the pricing tiers you have right now, and try and realign the number of tiers you have to be right in the Goldilocks zone. So not too many, not too few. And the way that you'll find this out, again, is by testing. So testing your pricing, experimenting with your pricing, A/B testing, whatever you want to call it. Each time you're talking to a new client or a prospect, always be testing the pricing strategy that you have. And then discounts. So my first question to you all is, how many of you offer discounts on your services? I see you, Mary, in the chat saying, why don't you change to another video option? So one of the reasons the team has decided to continue with Click Meeting, I believe, is due to the email notifications being fairly good within Click Meeting, but we are looking at other options, especially if this continues to happen, because as you said, this has been like I think 3 out of the 5 webinars now where we've had issues. So I am raising that with the team. But for anyone that's still here on this webinar, how many of you offer discounts? Let me know in the chat. If you offer a discount, say yes. If you don't offer a discount, say no. That'd be awesome to hear from you. I can see a few of you are typing. So my opinion on discounts is this, and this is from like a past as a salesperson too. I worked within sales for a number of years. And one huge issue that I see is that people just give out discounts so easily. And one of the problems with this is it devalues your service. And once you condition your customers to expect a discount, it's very difficult to then reverse that conditioning. Now, discounts do have a place, but too often as business owners, when we give a discount, we'd never ask for something in return. We just give the discount out of desperation or because we really want to land the client. So my advice is, I think discounts are fine. If you offer a discount though, you must benefit from that discount in return, and you must make that clear to your customer. So when someone says to me, Dylan, do you offer a discount on this service? Like when I've positioned something to someone, all of my packages are a 3-month minimum agreement, and that's paid on a monthly basis. And what I say to them is, so look, I don't typically offer discounts, and I explain why. However, one thing that I can do for you, because I am happy to show some flexibility and get you and start working with you as a client and start helping you. So one thing I can do is I can offer you a discount, and I offer a small discount. So I actually say I can offer you a 10% discount on the cost if you pay for the full 3 months upfront before we start the contract. And so the reason I do that is because that makes sure that I get a benefit in return. The benefit for me is improved cash flow for the business. If I get 3 months upfront before starting the project, improved cash flow for the business, and also a really solid sign of commitment from the client. So my thought on discounts is they have a place, but make sure you offer them in a way that you benefit in return. What do you guys think about that? Is that a useful piece of advice? Do you think that will help out when you're payment up front? It comes like, I don't know, yes, I can offer you a discount if you give me a testimonial before, or agree to a testimonial before we start working together. Or yes, I can give you a discount if you introduce me to 3 other business owners that you know, or something like that. So that's what I would do. And I see that, okay, great. So some people say they love that and they enjoy that. Mary says, how much do you offer for review? I'm not too sure. What do you mean by that question, Mary? Let me know what you mean by that question and I'll see if I can answer that for you. But this is my thought on discounts. I think far too many of you will be throwing out discounts and you shouldn't be doing it. Like, don't use a discount all the time because then you're just undervaluing your costs, your prices. You may as well just drop your prices. Now, second part of this webinar, how to select your pricing. Now, one thing I want to say is when choosing pricing, there is no right way, there is no wrong way, there is no silver bullet to this, unfortunately. This all comes with testing and experimenting. Now, Mary says, how much discount do you offer for a referral or a review? Yeah, so I would get like the maximum discount I ever give away from my agency is 10%. I won't give anything more. So yeah, with selecting your pricing, there is no right way, there is no wrong way, there is no silver bullet. I'm also learning this still as I continue to grow as well. So I just want to make that clear. But these are some of my ideas on, like, rather than how you should price things, I want to talk about what you should consider when you're pricing. So I asked a question earlier on in the webinar, but I think the audio maybe cut out at that point. So how many of you are pricing hourly? How many of you are doing things on a retainer? How many of you are using value-based pricing, performance-based pricing? It'd be really good to hear from you, like how you structure things. So in my business, we price things just one way, and that is retainers. We do a monthly retainer. But with some clients, and I haven't done this a lot, but this is something I'm implementing now moving forward on paid acquisition, so on Facebook ads or Google ads, and we're generating business for them, of course, which we will be. We do some performance-based pricing, so we'll take a revenue cut of the revenue that we're making for the business as well. So when you're pricing things, you want to consider how you want to position things. Do you want to price hourly, retainer, value-based pricing? Like some services, this is one thing I want to talk to you with value-based pricing is some services like the social media management you do for a small store may be very, very similar to the social media management you do for a large e-commerce store, for example. Your social media activity for that large e-commerce is based on the value it's delivering for the business. If your social media services are generating $20, $30, $50,000 in revenue for the business that you're working with, your pricing should be higher. And that's one thing that's really, really important to think about. So the other thing to consider is your overheads. So often when people do their pricing, they of course think about the cost of their staff. You often don't take into account, I actually found myself forgetting about this recently too, it's like all of the software that you use, how much does that time, of course, your taxes, your accountants, like as a business owner, you have to pay for an accountant, or I think it's a CPA is what they're called maybe in the US, I'm not too sure. But you need an accountant, you need to pay your taxes, you need so much other pieces of support that you need to factor these things in when you're pricing. Like you don't have to tell your client that that's why your pricing is more, or like you're including those in your costs. But you have to factor things in as a business owner, and you have to think about what profit margin you want to take on each client that you work with whilst you're positioning the pricing to them. It's so, so important to do that. So the other thing to consider is productizing your service. I'm not saying this is for everybody. Some people price things based on not the value that they bring, but like some people price things based on flexible, like they price things based on exactly what the client needs, and it's specific to each and every client, and it's different for each and every client. And I completely understand that. But if you're doing that and you're finding that a lot of the work you're doing is very, very similar, why don't you productize your service? So with your social media management, maybe you want to include X number of platforms or X number of posts per month, or all this kind of stuff, right? Like you want to include certain services within that. Why don't you productize things? Because when you productize your service, it's much easier to then pitch it when you're doing sales outreach or when you're positioning things to your clients. And then the other thing I always recommend looking at or doing some research in is how are your competitors pricing? This isn't always easy to find out because not everybody shares their pricing up front on their website or whatever. But if you bring on board a new client, they would have been speaking to other agencies or other freelancers, I can guarantee you that, and just ask them. Like, this is something that I did recently. We're normally scared to ask questions like that, and I don't really know why. Like, I asked one of my new clients about who else I was up against and what their pricing was like, and they actually ended up sharing with me the entire pitch deck that that agency sent to them, which they probably shouldn't have done, but for me as a business owner, that was extremely useful. So these are 4 really important points that I think you should consider when you're putting up your pricing. So now let's do a quick pricing Q&A. This isn't going to last ages because we have some more slides. I want to stop and take some questions and also go through the chat box too. So I can see that Heidi said, everything depends on the service. They have some that are very specific tasks and they do a set price. Other clients want to hire them to do X number of hours each month and they may charge what they want. So they offer hourly pricing too. Okay, that makes sense. So Nancy says, what would you suggest to spend for a car franchise dealership ballpark? When you say spend, Nancy, what do you mean? Oh, okay, so you said retainer for business development advice plus social media package. So it's really hard for me because I don't work with businesses like that. I only work with SaaS companies, so software as a service companies. But the one thing that I would suggest is look at the revenue that you are going to generate for them. Like with a car dealership, each car they sell, think about how much that's worth to them, and base your pricing on taking that into account. And like show them when you're positioning things. Like you've mentioned between 3 and 6K. Obviously, depending on the currency and stuff like that, sounds within the right ballpark for sure. And it's so easy to position that because you can literally say to them, look, you sell one car. I know it's hard to prove the sale of a car, but like you say, look, you sell one car and you've made the money back. And there are some ways that you can prove the sale of a car. So you could do like some lead form ads or lead generation ads, and you can make sure you're tracking everyone that comes through from those ads, for example. There are a few ways that you could improve your tracking for sure. But yeah, that would be my recommendation anyway. Any other questions from anyone before we move on? So Sonia says, I'm not selling social media yet, but does PromoRepublic provide a way to prove the customer has received a certain amount of sales from social media? Okay, Sonia, great question. So PromoRepublic doesn't do that exactly. No tools will do that exactly. The only ways you can prove the exact number of sales that have come from social media is if you're doing paid acquisition campaigns. So if you're generating these sales through advertising, through Facebook ads or Google ads, then through those ads, if you have a pixel installed on the website, you can track the exact amount of revenue that's come from those ads. What you can do with like PromoRepublic is it has some reporting built within, especially within the agency solution, which I'll talk about briefly later on, where you can see like how many people have clicked through from the post, how many people have seen the post, etc. But the best way to track like social media, just general social media marketing activity, can be hard to track into exact sales. the thing that I would recommend is just making sure you always set up like separate landing pages. You use a link shortener, so something like Bitly, so you can track the links coming, the clicks coming through. You get emails at certain points, so you can just track everything in your funnel. That's the best way to do things. But PromoRepublic does have some really useful reporting features and options as well, especially within the agency solution. Okay, so last section, tips to improve agency profitability. How many of you want to improve the profitability of your agency? I'm expecting to see lots of yeses in the chat box, right? If not, you should probably leave this webinar right now. Awesome, cool. I'm pleased to see that, and I'm pleased that some of you are still here too. So thanks everyone for sticking with us through the issues that we had at the beginning. So like there are 1,000,001 different ways to improve profitability. I'm going to put a few on the screen, literally like 4 bullet points, but then at the end of this webinar, we'll do a Q&A and we can talk through things. To be honest with you guys, there's probably only maybe 10 minutes left, or not even that, 5 minutes left of slides. And then we'll do some Q&As, because I love like actually giving you guys advice and helping you out with things that you're facing right now. That's something that I really enjoy. So a number of ways to improve profitability. The first one, you've probably guessed this from what I've said so far, is like step away from pricing based on time or effort and focus on pricing based on the value you bring for your clients. So for me, as an example, I do a lot of consulting work with SaaS companies and software companies. And one of their biggest pain points is they need to improve their like website conversion rate. They need to improve their conversion rate from like free trial sign up to paid user. And I consult with them, and literally some of these clients I consult with, we spend 2 hours a month on the phone and that's it. And I charge a significant or a good amount of money for that, because I know that from my advice, even if they improve their conversion rate by 0.5%, that can increase their sales by tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars over the year. So I would encourage you to try and step away. If you want to improve your profitability, step away from pricing based on time or effort and start pricing based on returns. The second thing, optimize your operations. So audit all of your costs. I mean, everything. Like this is a process I'm going through right now with my assistant, is like, look at every single piece of software that you spend money on, every single employee that you spend money on, every single contractor you work with. Go through everything, all of your costs, and list them out. And I can guarantee you there'll be like 5 or 10 things that you're paying for that you don't need. If you look at something and you can't remember the last time you used it, or you really don't need it that much, get rid of it. If you have some contractors that you work with and they're doing an okay job, like they're fine, but someone can do the same job for less money, unfortunately, I know it's tough, but ruthless, get rid of that because you can optimize your operations. So make sure that you go through that and audit all of the costs that you have. Then the third point is something we talked about a few weeks ago, and this is super important. And I think this will, a lot of you listening to this webinar, this will generate you a lot more money over the year, like I can guarantee. And I introduced this only a month ago because a mentor or coach that I work with suggested this to me, and that's to introduce automated invoice collection. How many of you do automated invoices? How many of you invoice through and use payment processors like Stripe or Braintree or Square? I guarantee that most of you take your payment in like, you'll probably use an embed. I'm not just talking about invoicing, I actually mean like payment collection. So I bet most of you are taking payments from wire transfer or checks or like cash from your clients, right? And every time you do that, you leave yourself open to what's called buyer's remorse. So if, let's say I have a service every month, like let's think of 2 examples here. So the first one is, let's say, I'm just going to pick one of you from the chat. So Heidi, I'm going to choose you. Let's say I'm working with your agency, Heidi, and you're doing social media management for my company. And each month you send me an invoice via email or in the post or whatever, you send me an invoice, and then I either send that invoice to my accountant for them to pay it, or I go into my bank account and I have to manually pay the invoice for you, right? Every single time, even, I know Heidi, you said you use PayPal, but even with PayPal, every single time that buyer still has to make the decision to click yes and to send the payment, or they have to make the decision to send the wire transfer, right? But if you introduce an auto payment collection, so you use something like Stripe, Braintree, any of these other processes, Square, there's loads of them, you collect their card details at the start and you invoice them, and then every single month the invoice just comes out automatically on the agreed date. They have like no choice. They don't have to go in and press yes. They don't have to say okay. Think about like how many subscriptions do you have personally, like Netflix, for example, where it just comes out every single month automatically. I bet if you had to go and do a manual like bank transfer to Netflix every single month, you probably wouldn't do it, right? So this is one piece of advice that is something that's very, very small, but I can guarantee it will improve your profitability a lot because it will reduce the risk of your client going through that buyer's remorse process, and it will reduce the dropout rate of some of your clients because they just won't have to think about that. How many of you think that will be useful? Because I can see the chat's gone very quiet. I know a few of you are talking about invoice tracking software, etc. But how many of you think that is a useful, beneficial piece of advice? And how many of you are going to look into implementing that? Awesome. Cool. That's really good to hear. So that will definitely make an improvement to your business. I can guarantee it for sure. And so Christian says, nice idea, but don't you lose a couple of percent? So look, of course there are payment processing fees. They're not huge, like they're really not. And would you rather lose a couple of percent or a few clients? Like, let's say the client is paying you $3,000 a month and you lose that client and you're expecting to have them for another 6 months. That's $18,000. Your fees aren't going to be anywhere near $18,000. So it's definitely worth it, 100%. And then the final tip I'm giving is to upsell current clients additional services. And you can sell them things like this. So if you're new to these webinars, you maybe won't know about this. If you've been on these webinars before, you've heard me talking about the power of PromoRepublic's agency solution. So PromoRepublic has been an incredible social media tool for a long time, but now they've branched out into the agency and freelancer space, and that's why I'm leading these webinars for them. And they've launched, it's live, this amazing product called like PromoRepublic for agencies. And within PromoRepublic for agencies, it has like things like an approval workflow so that it minimizes the time that you spend with clients on backwards and forwards on email about whether they're happy with the content, whether they're not happy with the content. There's tons of other things that we can talk about later on, but you also have the option to upsell your current clients. This is a way to improve and increase your revenue. And within PromoRepublic, there are also a few additional options and some ideas that I have for you that you can immediately start offering as upsells to your clients to increase your revenue, to increase the average order per customer. So the first one is social monitoring, which starts from $49. And basically this enables you all within one dashboard, within the PromoRepublic agency dashboard. You can see, like, you can have all of your clients' social profiles in one place, and you can see all of the comments, you can see everyone that's tagged them, everyone that's engaged with them, all in one place. You can resolve them, you can assign them to people, you can answer these queries. And you can upsell this to your clients, and you can offer it as, I call it a community management service, is how I offer it to my clients. I tell them that I'll be responding to comments, engaging with comments, I'll be spending time building and growing their audience. And this is a great way to do it whilst minimizing your time that you spend on it too. And it's a great upsell. And the second suggestion from me is the intelligent ads service from PromoRepublic. So again, this is something that you can upsell to your clients if you have maybe some brick and mortar stores that you work with, or some small businesses, or even bigger businesses, and you're doing their social media management. Why don't you offer them paid acquisition if you aren't already? Why aren't you driving even more traffic to their website? Why aren't you making more sales for them? And one way you can do that is through Facebook ads, right? And PromoRepublic have an incredible team that offers an intelligent ads service. So you can start to make your social media ads ROI positive, and you can show all different sorts of ads, and PromoRepublic will basically run these ads for you. The team will run them for you. And again, the pricing for this starts at $49 per month. So these are two ways that you can upsell your current clients and make more revenue from your current clients. Now, as I said, if you've watched these webinars before, you will have heard about this, but there's also one thing that's really important to state, is that all of these webinars before, the agency solution from PromoRepublic was still in the kind of early bird phase. And now it's launched. So we were doing a 50% off special, whereas now we are dropping that down to a 25% off special just for webinar guests. I honestly don't know how much longer we'll offer a discount for, just simply because this thing is now live. It's not in the early bird phases. So right now it is at $75 a month instead of the typical $99 a month for anyone that watches these webinars. And if you want to get a free trial of the agency, like collaboration features, if you want to get up and running on the agency program, if you want to learn more about the agency program, the way to do that, the only way to do that as well, to make sure you get the special offers, if you want to learn more about the social media monitoring, the paid ads as upsells for your clients, the only way to find out is by sending me an email. So this is my email address, dylan@PromoRepublic.com. And in the subject line of the email, make sure you put webinar offer. So put webinar offer in the subject line of the email and just send me an email and we can talk about any of the opportunities or ultimately the PromoRepublic agency solution, because I know that will add a ton of value to a lot of your businesses. And that is it. So we're gonna wrap things up there. If there are any questions, I have time for 1 or 2 questions, and then we can go. So I can see that. Let's have a look here. Okay, so Marcus says the agency solution starts at $99 a month. Yeah, so agency solution starts at $99 a month. That doesn't include like the social media intelligent ads, they're additional costs, but within PromoRepublic, if you haven't used the tool before, there's so many incredible things that will save you a ton of time. So you have the content creator built into PromoRepublic. So think of it like almost like a combination of Canva and like Hootsuite all in one place. So you can build all of your graphics and you can also schedule them on PromoRepublic. And that has saved my social media manager literally like 4 or 5 hours a week. Just because my social media manager, before I was working with PromoRepublic, he would create graphics and designs in Canva, download them to his computer, go to Hootsuite, upload them to Hootsuite, and just cutting that process out and having everything in one place, we've saved hours every single week. And ultimately, as a business owner, we were talking about auditing costs. If he's spending now 4 hours a week less on things like that, I can use his skills elsewhere better. Awesome. And so Marcus says, if I'm already a customer and I want to upgrade to the agency, how does that work? Yeah, Marcus, so send me an email with dylan@promorepublic.com and put webinar offer in there and just say in the email copy that you want to talk about upgrading, and I'll get something set up for you. I'll get a call set up with a member of the team to get things fixed out. Cool. So Heidi says that she loved it, the tool so much. That is awesome to hear. Nancy says she loves everything in PromoRepublic, all of the suggestions, etc. And that's really great to hear. So you can see, Marcus, as well, if you are thinking about it, like we have a ton of happy customers already, and anyone else that's thinking about this, like this is a great tool. I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't really believe in it. I used to work at one of the competitors, right? Like I worked at Hootsuite, and genuinely right now I believe this is for a social media marketing agency or for a digital marketing agency, I genuinely believe this tool is much better. Cool. So what I'm going to do is, everyone, I'm going to wrap things up. Sorry about the issues at the start. I really appreciate everyone sticking out to the end and hanging around. I hope you found value in the webinar this week. If you have any questions, make sure you send me an email. So dylan@promorepublic.com if you want to take us up on any of the offers I talked about, or you just want to learn more about those offers. I would love to talk to you about them. Ricardo, I can see you said you're late. Will there be a recap? So the webinar will be uploaded to YouTube. But if you have any specific questions or want to learn about the offers I just mentioned, please do send me an email. And just one final thing, everyone. So these webinars happen every single Thursday. So make sure you tune in next Thursday. We're also in the process of launching lots of exciting things too. So keep eyes peeled. And so you should get the replay link, but just in case, tomorrow search on YouTube for PromoRepublic and it will definitely be there by tomorrow as well. And Heidi, so the topic next Thursday, we're talking all about creating proposals. So I hope you tune in for that one as well. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to wrap up. It was great spending some time with you all again, and hopefully I will see some of you in my inbox. Any questions, want to take us up on any of those offers, just let me know. Thanks, everyone.